one of the members of the board, and I know most of you, but there may be a few that I don't know. I want to welcome everybody here today for this festive holiday meeting that we're having via Zoom. We're excited to have a speaker that is very interesting speak with us and some activities to do together, even though we can't be together. So good afternoon. We're pleased today to have Senator Brian Williams as our main speaker. Senator Williams represents District 14 in the Missouri Senate and was elected to the Senate in 2018 as a Democrat and unopposed. His current term expires January 4th, 2023. He was the only Black man serving as a senator in the last session of the state Senate, and he will become the first in 2 decades to hold a leadership role in the state Senate when he takes over as Assistant Minority Floor Leader. And perhaps he'll share with us a little bit of his goals in that role. District 14 includes University City, north through Ferguson and a part of Florissant, where I live, and west through Hazelwood. I'm very pleased to be in his district. One of Senator Williams' priorities for the coming legislative session is to pass his police reform bill by opening a dialogue with Republicans regarding his and other people of color's experiences and getting their support for this. He also wants to make advocating for women and people of color a primary focus of the Missouri Legislative Black Caucus. As you can imagine, he is very busy right now, and we really appreciate him making time in his schedule to speak with us today. Please welcome Senator Brian Williams.
Thank you. Good afternoon. How's everyone doing?
Okay. All things considered.
Very good. You know, I'm looking on the screen and I'm seeing so many familiar faces. I see Ann Ross. We were just on a call together prior. I see Miss Louise Wilkerson, a good friend of mine. There's so many great people on here. So first, I want to thank Susan and the Metro League of Women Voters for moderating this discussion. You know, the issues of public safety and police reform are among my highest priorities, and I appreciate the opportunity to discuss them with you. One of the most important things that we can do, not only around police reform, but just public safety in general, is really figure out a strategic way to make our streets safer and then ultimately improve the relationships between police officers and the communities that they serve. One of the most important things that we can also do is recognize that the men and women of law enforcement who risk their lives each and every day deserve to know that we're doing everything we can to protect the integrity of their honored profession. And it solely comes through a couple of different things. Common sense reforms that would include things like banning chokeholds, requiring de-escalation training, and prohibiting no-knock arrest warrants. Now, we can improve police-community relations and restore the trust that's the very foundation of public safety. But I want to make one thing clear, that this isn't an us versus them situation. This is important reforms that have been embraced by law enforcement agencies across the country, and they've also have received bipartisan support right here in the state of Missouri. In January, when the legislature reconvenes, I filed legislation with these reforms and more to make sure that this issue remains front and center. A couple of things that my bill specifically addresses is, one, prohibiting no-knock arrest warrants unless there's reasonable suspicion that the suspect of a violent felony will escape or cause bodily harm to others. Now, a reason this is important is right in St. Louis County, where I live and represent, we've seen situations where a woman's dog was shot and killed due to a no-knock arrest warrant for an unpaid utility bill, which led to a lawsuit with St. Louis County Police Department, I believe just south of $1 million. This bill would also eliminate citizens' arrest, prohibit the use of chokeholds as a form of restraint, classify the offense of an officer engaging in sexual conduct with a detainee or prisoner in the custody of an officer as a Class E felony. And it would also require officers to complete a minimum amount of training in de-escalation tactics. Meanwhile, there's more that we can also do to make our streets safer, and that includes doing things like preventing and reducing gun violence. Now, as a Democrat, I support doing everything we can to prevent violent crime, especially gun violence, throughout our state. As we've seen, that has become a very serious issue, not only in our community, but throughout the country. And that's why I'll fight to continue to expand mental health services. I'll work towards ramping up job training in underserved communities, helping more young people graduate high school prepared for a career or college, and then also reinstating Missouri's background check law for gun sales. Let's note, in 2007, Missouri repealed the law that required background checks on all sales and transfers of handguns. Since then, Missouri has seen a 25% increase in firearm homicide. Being a police officer is already a dangerous job. I think about my uncle who drives me. He's a retired St. Louis City police officer. He served 27 years in the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. He had every intention on serving 30 years. The reason he did not attain that 30 years is because my aunt was terrified whether or not he would make it home safe at night. So when people are in dangerous, high-stress jobs, it can make small problems worse. That's why reducing gun violence will keep our streets and our police officers safer, and that would make all of our communities ultimately stronger. One more priority that I want to talk about before we take questions is expungement. Going forward, we can keep our community safer and stronger by making sure that people who have served their time and their debt to society can find a good job and a good wage as they re-enter back into society. We all know that's extremely important. I've sponsored legislation for 2021 that would make expunging nonviolent criminals records easier. And specifically what this bill would do is it would allow information from the Missouri Central Repository to be made available to expungement clinics or legal aid organizations. It would also lower the expungement surcharge amount from $250 to $100. And then it would also allow a judge to use discretion to waive the surcharge if the petitioner is found to be unable to pay the cost in general. It also would lower the earliest time to request expungement from 3 years to 6 months. Other provisions will streamline the process to help people who have paid their debt to society find a good paying job and ultimately rebuild their lives. I want to thank you and Susan all for just allowing me to be here and have this discussion around important issues. And I know that sometimes our country and our community seem deeply divided, especially right after an election, right? But I firmly believe that there's more that unites us than divides us. And as a state senator, I represent every single one of you, and not just people in my district, and not just the ones who voted for me. I hope that other leaders feel the same way, because we all know that public safety, police reform, building an economy that works for everyone should not be partisan positions. They should be common goals that we all strive to achieve. So thank you all so much for your time, and I'm looking forward to questions.
Good question. I don't know if I should wait to be called on or should I just talk?
No, look, hey, this is one thing I like to do for those that have ever been a part of a conversation or met me. I think it's important to just talk about issues. It doesn't have to be this formal presentation. Let's just talk about things that really impact our lives and how we can make them work together. So, Jennifer, how can I help you?
Well, thank you, first of all, Senator Williams. I am so impressed by you. I'm so grateful that you are in public service, and I feel wonderful that you are part of our state Senate. And I apologize. I live in St. Charles. I'm sorry.
Well, as long as
we tried.
As long as you live in the state of Missouri, I got your back.
I'm just apologizing because I know who represents us. But I love what you're talking about. I really do. I love what you're talking about. what do you think about, and this is something I've heard kind of, I don't know, just maybe about a little bit, but we hear a lot about mental health services, which I'm absolutely in favor of. I think we send police officers out too often to deal with things that they're simply not trained to deal with. And I used to see it all the time. I work for the hospital system, and they bring homeless people to the hospital, and they don't necessarily have a reason to be admitted, but so there's nothing we can do for them. We don't, unless they have a psych reason, and maybe we can find them a psych bed. And so it's just, I don't know. It seems like that would do a lot if we could find some way of dealing with some of these social service issues besides just dumping them in systems that aren't set up to help them. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, and thank you for that question. Prior to serving in the Missouri Senate, I spent quite a bit of time. I worked in the United States Congress, and I spent time working to roll out the Affordable Care Act marketplace right here in the state of Missouri under President Obama's administration. I also, to date, serve as a board director for People's Health Center, where I was instrumental in creating the first behavioral health center for children of its kind right here in the city of St. Louis. So mental health disparity, mental health services, access to healthcare services with the scope of cultural competence being the keystone to that is extremely important. And I think it would be a valuable asset to our police department. And we need to be clear before the question comes up, and I still want to hear the question because I think it's a very relevant one, but reimagining public safety is extremely important. And how we ensure that we are providing police departments and law enforcement officers with experts that can deal with folks in the community based on a various or an unprecedented scope of situations, but also making sure those services are available to our officers is going to be more important now than it's ever been. So hopefully this bill would allow us to not only pass into law, but create a more robust conversation about not passing the buck on to other professionals outside of law enforcement, but making sure law enforcement is inclusive to those challenges.
So you would envision law enforcement having the resources within their department to deal with social services issues as opposed to having another agency that they refer to, correct?
100%, and making sure those services are available to the officers.
Yes. That always seems to get left off, doesn't it? That the officers, I think, need more access to mental health services. But
yeah, I mean, it's a very high stress job, and they go through very traumatizing situations every day.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
I have a question regarding your, thank you, first of all, for coming, Senator Williams, and we really appreciate it. And I think it's a great idea that you're looking at working with the expungement of nonviolent crimes, because as a hiring manager in my department, I've seen where so many young people now are unable to get jobs. And it is something simple as a citation in their municipality. Could you tell me how this is really going to look, and how do you think the information is going to be disseminated to those nonviolent offenders to get their records expunged?
Absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Lee, for the question. And that's why we're having this conversation today. When I tell you, I make myself available every opportunity possible, even on a Saturday, to talk about these issues, because what happens is that laws are passed, good or bad, and the larger population has no clue how they impact us or what they do, or that they're even into law until a situation happens. Now, we passed an expungement law last year out the Missouri Senate. What my bill would do is actually make it a little bit more attainable. And that's by lowering that expungement surcharge, because you don't want folks to not be able to get their record cleaned up because they're poor. Lowering the time from 3 years to 6 months, because if you make a mistake as a teenager, 3 years is very instrumental years in your life. So going 3 years in any part of your life with no employment or during a very instrumental time in your life can be almost more detrimental than anything. So that's what we're hoping to do, is actually make the law where it's tailored more to having the teeth to be accommodating to the population that we're hoping to help. And what I want to do is continue to do things like that. Missouri Central Repository is very important, because what it would allow us to do is work with expungement clinics and legal aid organizations who are dedicated to working with the community to not only ensure that they have access to legal services, but informing them on what the law is and how they can benefit from it. So just these conversations here, and anyone in your network, and that goes for everyone on the call. Anytime you want me to make myself available or share information from my office, we'll do that to make sure that the larger population is benefiting from these laws, and we're ultimately putting Missourians on the track to be able to have successful careers and not be defined by a mistake that they make.
Okay, and I have one other question to that with the background, with the expungement. Are you aware of the two different types of background checks? And will the expungement cover both of those? Because what I've learned is that, and this is at my place where I work, you come in, you get a background check, you clear it. And I think it's the Oklahoma background check, I may have the wrong state, that you can work there for 2 years. And if they decide that this time they're going to run that Oklahoma background check, you actually get walked out the door. And I think it's unfair, but what are your thoughts about that?
Well, absolutely. What this would do is that this would actually expunge, whether if it's a nonviolent offense, federal or state, it will expunge from their record. So you will see that it's a closed record. So they won't have access to it. And even to date in Missouri, so the process now, what this does is make it more accessible. If you wanted to get your record expunged in Missouri, you would have to get an attorney. They would have to file a civil suit. And depending on how many months it takes to get a court date, it could be very expensive for someone who can't afford an attorney. And then also, judges are very conservative about it. And the reason I believe judges are conservative about it is because they have to come before the legislature and government officials, which have a lot of influence on the trajectory of their judicial career. So when you have laws in place, it gives judges more discretion to do the right thing and not be afraid that if they get too on one side of the political scope, that it can have some type of impact on their judicial career. And that's the reality of it. So when you empower judges to be able to do the right thing, I think it ultimately helps us tackle a larger population of people who are impacted by these laws.
Oh, thank you so much.
Sure.
Question. This is Linda McDaniel. What is the relationship between the expungement and then also the laws about allowing felons, once they've served their term and gone through all that, able to vote? Are those two separate kinds of actions, or do they end up being combined somewhat?
Well, they'll be combined, because we'll continue to have the conversation about not only the importance to vote, but also making sure that everyone has access to voting. So that would definitely be a conversation, making sure folks who have committed crimes recognize when they can vote, and also encouraging them to vote. So no, that'll always be at the center of the conversation. And in my profession, voting matters.
Thank you.
We have a couple of questions in the chat I want to be sure to get to. Angie asked, are there any Republican senators that are in favor of bringing back the background check for handguns that was repealed in 2007? What do you think?
Well, no, that has not been a conversation. And, one thing that we have to do, as one thing I have to do and Democrats have to do, is our messaging and how we go about addressing issues that are impacting the St. Louis region and beyond. And I think sometimes that messaging gets lost in translation And then it ultimately causes Republicans or folks that are in favor of strong gun laws to really shut down and really end the conversation. I'm always talking to my Republican colleagues about challenges that are happening in the St. Louis region and how we've seen homicides increase 25%. And that's been primarily in St. Louis and Kansas City and in the urban core in the state of Missouri. So we need to put laws in place to not only protect our citizens, but to ensure that folks do not have access to guns. And this most recent situation, I sent a condolence letter to the family of a woman who was shot in the head on I-170 driving to Forest Park to visit a friend. Innocent bystander. She did nothing wrong, did not deserve to lose her life in any capacity. And to think that I just sent a condolence letter yesterday to her family, because this is something that happened not only in my district, but happened in a region that we all live in and love. And that'll be a conversation I'll be having with my colleagues about how this is impacting our region, it's impacting families. And if we don't get guns off the street, we're going to continue to lose lives to senseless crimes. And if we don't pass common sense gun reforms in this state, it's only going to get worse. And that's why I'm proud to have not only voted against, but have held the floor and have kept draconian policies like allowing guns on the Metro Link to not go into law, to ensure that young people can't carry guns on college campuses. Those are things that I've stood strongly against and I'll continue to do. And hopefully that can spill into retroactively working to repeal some laws that happened before I was in the legislature.
Okay. I had a related question. One of your points was to prohibit law enforcement agencies from receiving the military surplus equipment from the government. Now, Trump lifted the ban on that, didn't he? And do you anticipate that the Biden administration would restore that ban, or does that have to be done through a congressional law?
Well, that too, but we also have to be clear with that, is that local government can make a request from the federal government to get an Army tank or to get some type of military grade equipment. And guess what? They get it for free. It doesn't cost them a thing. So until we start really putting in common sense police reforms locally, where we change the culture of our police departments, where they recognize that they don't have to police with this type of equipment, then we're going to be in a better position. Because right now, we're not creating environments that are safe for citizens. We're not creating environments that are safe for law enforcement. We continue to create this us versus them environment. And until we realize that public safety is important to creating stronger communities, we're going to always have problems like that. But it doesn't matter who the president is. If the equipment's available, a local police department can ask for it and they'll get it for free if it's available.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Williams, I had a question. First, I wanted to say thank you so much because I love the comprehensive way you're looking at police reform and that you're continuing to press on it along with other areas. I wanted to also offer that the suicide rate using handguns in Missouri has gone up dramatically, and that could also be evidence you bring. And Moms Demand Action has a lot of, they want common sense gun reform. So speaking about it in common sense terms also could be a bridge. I wanted to say one thing about your approach to police reform and just ask. There is a national group called Campaign Zero, a hashtag 8can'twait, which has 8 data-driven things that reduce police homicides of civilians. 2 of them are on your list: require de-escalation training and ban chokeholds. Even though there are 6 other ones that are not on your list. And the one which I'm totally in favor of course, banning no-knock things is not really one of the 8 data-driven things on the list. I just wanted to alert you to that hashtag 8can'twait campaign by Campaign Zero, because those are 8 exact strategies that are shown by data to reduce police killing of civilians. I tweeted this to Mayor Cruson a number of times. No police department that I know of in the metro area has all of these 8, and I just wanted to alert you to that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for that point you made, Mary. And one thing I want to make clear to everyone listening, as elected officials, it's our job to know everything about something, but it's experts like you that knows everything about a lot. And having these conversations is very important because it's what helps us shape policies that impact our state. I firmly believe that government works best when it's close to the people. And that's why I make time to have these conversations. Now, in terms of the comprehensive policing reform bill, that bill came into fruition by working with national groups throughout the country. And we wanted to make sure we tackled not only some common sense reforms, but we were able to not create a convoluted law when we already knew it was going to be an uphill battle. So some of the things that we were really hoping to accomplish, and that's no dismissal to Campaign Ground Zero, who I'm very familiar with, our mom's demand is that we wanted to ban chokeholds. We wanted to address no-knock arrest warrants, because to think that a Black woman's dog was shot and killed in St. Louis County for an unpaid utility bill is beyond me. We wanted to make sure folks are not being sexually assaulted when they're detained or in custody of law enforcement. And we want to make sure that police officers are getting uniform training in this state. Now, I'm hoping that this will set precedent for local government to get more involved and actually hold accountability for their police departments. As crazy as it sounds, I think we see more, and I don't want to be I don't want to be rude when I say this, but this is how I personally feel, is that I think we run into so many levels of backpedaling from local government, afraid to call out its own police department. And this is where these things should be happening. So I'm hoping that this law gives local government the courage to actually take a look at its local police department and say, hey, we need to start doing the right thing. And one thing they will say, because I'm working with law enforcement around this, and the first thing they said to me was, Senator Williams, we don't train officers on chokeholds, but is there any accountability in place if someone was to do it anyway? So what I'm saying is that I want to make sure that there's accountability in a police department to ensure that this subculture of bad police officers are not tainting an honorable profession. And if we empower police officers to be able to call out their colleagues who are engaging in corrupt and improper tactics when they engage with the community, then we'll find ourselves having a more accountable and more responsible police department. And until that happens, we have to go and take approaches like we are now and saying, hey, you need to start making sure that you're spending your money properly when it comes to ensuring that police officers have access to the proper services to ensure the public is safe. There's no such thing, and I told Governor Parson this, we had an hour conversation, we agreed to disagree. I said, Governor, what's the point of having a witness protection program if folks in the community don't feel comfortable coming forward to law enforcement? And while we're at it, you still haven't told me how we're going to pay for it. So that's where we are today. And I can tell you right now, I'm filing a comprehensive police reform bill. I'm not on the ballot. I'm not running for re-election. I'm not running for anything. I'm doing this because I know firsthand, as a 18-year-old Black man who was on on Christmas vacation from college, got pulled over in Blackjack, Missouri for driving while Black, handcuffed on the sidewalk, and didn't realize my constitutional rights were violated until I was old enough to know that everyone in this country, everyone in our community, everyone in this state are not treated the same. And we have to do something about it. As Susan stated earlier, I'm the first Black man to serve in the Missouri Senate in 2 decades, the first one to hold the role of leadership in 2 decades. This has not been a conversation that's been available in the Missouri Senate. And it's coming from a personal place. It's not coming from a place of, I have this vendetta out for police officers. I know that there are bad police officers that are doing the wrong things, and we need to make sure that they are not in the business of policing.
Thank you for your answer and for your great efforts. Really
Thank
appreciate
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And please, any
Is there
ideas,
time for another question?
please send them over to me. I'll put my
Is there
email.
time for another question?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I got to talking too much. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'd like to ask.
I always appreciate listening to you talk. You're very intelligent.
Oh,
You're
that's
very
Velma Bailey.
compassionate.
How you doing?
Fine. I just love the passion that you bring to your job for the people. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you.
But I
Velma.
wanted to ask you a question about the policing. Oh, I appreciate you. And the question I want to ask is that I see a lot of information that you're giving about the accountability of the police and the accountability of the citizens. But I work at a not-for-profit that we founded in our community. It's grassroots, and we work with children. And we just got really blessed to connect with Major Angela Kuntz. And for 5 years, she's been helping us develop relationships with the children and the police in some real meaningful ways. And we're looking forward to some outcomes where the children, once they get to be teenagers and young adults, that they won't have the same friction between police and between citizens and young people, I guess by habit or training, feeling like the police are against them. And then the police feeling like they have to do this over-aggressive kind of policing. So we've had the children go to the real-time crime center. The police come 5 times to our camp in Fairground Park. They do anti-bullying training. Is there anything you can put in your bill that would help create some more relationships like that throughout the state, and even maybe doing some racial reconciliation in communities so kids and families can get more like at the personal level or relationship level with police?
Absolutely, Velma. That's a great question. And the event that she is referring to in Fairground Park, and I'm hopefully we are in a place where we have a vaccine and we don't have to social distance next summer. It's a phenomenal event that you all should come out and check out. And it's just cool seeing all the kids running around. And I'm sorry, is that not Fairground? Oh, Fallon Park.
Yes, it is. You're right.
So that's a really great event. But, I believe if we tackle this subculture of bad police officers, I think everything else comes full circle. I don't believe that every police officer wakes up in the morning with the intention of shooting a Black male or young person. I truly believe that most get up every day and they have every intentions of doing their job the best they can safely. I think this subculture that has tainted the profession, we need to figure out how to eliminate that. And it starts by these common sense reforms that have been embraced by law enforcement agencies throughout the country. And I believe that once we get this into law, it's going to ultimately give cover to good police officers to call out bad ones that want to have a relationship with the community, that want to work with young people, that want to encourage a diverse police department, that want to encourage more young people going into the police force. One thing I talked about with Governor Parson is that if you want to remove the residency rule for police departments in the city of St. Louis, which I did not support because I believe that that's a local control issue. And I think that the citizens of the city of St. Louis should make the decision on a ballot what they want to do with their police department. But I told him that we should have a certain threshold that the police departments have to reach in terms of diversity in the police department, people of color, women, and ensuring that we are having folks in our police department that are that reflect the community.
Okay.
I have a question from Nancy Hirsch.
Really quick. So I'm looking in the chat, and I don't want to get too far away from some things. And I'm on your time, so I'll stay as long as I need to talk about this important stuff. But it was one question that I wanted to address that came from Angie Dunlap. And it was about how do I work to bridge the divide between urban and rural when you talk to senators across the state on how we help rural understand the violence that happens in the urban core. One thing is relationships. When I ran for the Missouri Senate, growing up, I competed regionally and nationally in robotics. I thought I would build planes and fly them. I had no idea I would be a state senator. And I ran solely because in every profession known to man, you have to work with people you don't like, and you still have to get the job done. And politics should be no different. So I set professionalism as precedent for what I do, and I work with my colleagues and build relationships. And just as important as I think the issues that impact the urban center is, I make time to learn, educate, and inform myself on the issues that impact the rural parts of our state. And I'm just as equally engaged around issues that are important to them. And that's why I'm extremely optimistic because of that approach that I've taken in the Missouri Senate, that we'll be able to get this bill into law and ultimately spend future years working to make it even more robust to create a safe environment around policing, not only in St. Louis and Kansas City, but the entire state of Missouri.
Okay.
Nancy
I
Hirsch.
hope I answered that question.
Nancy Hirsch, you've been waiting a while. Do you want to ask your question?
Yes.
You got Nancy and then Linda McDaniel.
Thank you.
And Susan.
Thank you. And thank you for being here.
Sure.
My question has to do with police unions and their effect on controlling police departments from a discipline standpoint, in that they don't, sometimes they force the police departments to keep the bad apples that they want to get rid of. And if there's anything that can be addressed there with the police unions.
Yeah, absolutely, Nancy. Thank you for that question. We're working with the police unions, the Sheriff's Association, the Highway Patrol. We're also working with activists as well as the ACLU. And that's a stakeholder group that we created to talk about these reforms and what the challenges are, getting insight from everyone that's involved. And we'll be meeting again actually next Friday on the 18th. And then I'll be meeting with the Police Officers Association here in St. Louis on the 17th. So we've had extensive conversations, and that also includes Republican leadership, with hope to have the Police Association on board. And they have supported quite a bit of the reforms. Now, not all of them, but quite a bit of them. So, for example, they've committed to supporting laws that would ensure that police officers aren't engaging in sexual conduct with folks that they detain or folks within correctional facilities. They understand that they don't train on chokeholds, but we need to have accountability measures in place to ensure that folks aren't using those practices. And then they also understand that there needs to be uniform laws to ensure that bad police officers aren't bouncing around from municipality to municipality, but then also security guards that are working at public transportation sites like Metrolink are getting the proper training that they need if they have any intention on detaining someone that may have committed a crime in the community. So we have a really strong stakeholder group, and every conversation we have, we're not always agreeing, but we have committed to working with each other.
Okay, I have a question. First, I'd like to thank you for this extensive discussion we've had. I don't know when we've been able to have this kind of discussion in a long, long time. And I actually think we could go on 2 more hours and continue to learn, but I want to change the subject.
Sure.
I want to ask you your opinion and what do you think about the national popular vote in regard to the election of the president? And do you need any information about what the national popular vote is?
Well, yes, I always need information on everything because, like I said before, I was elected to represent you and learn about things, not know everything. So if you want to kind of go into detail a little bit so I can make sure I understand the context of the question, and I'll answer it the best I can.
Okay, the national popular vote is a means by which states sign a compact with each other, and it has been declared constitutional. And the compact that is when the electoral vote for one individual for president reaches 270, then all the states that have signed into that compact will vote for whomever received the most, quote, popular vote.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there are some other people on that have also been working on this, but I think that's sort of a brief kind of explanation of it. It has been filed, I believe, this session. I'm not sure by who or which house. And there have been, and I can't tell you exactly how many there have been, 20, I don't know. There have been a number of states that have already signed into this compact. So does that explain things to you? Or maybe we could have a conversation at some later point and really go back and forth on more of the details.
Absolutely, Ms. McDaniel. I do understand exactly what you're saying, and I do think that can be a process that can be very beneficial to the country. In terms of me being able to work on it from a policy perspective, I think we should have a conversation offline. So I can assure that my office and we're all kind of up to speed to make sure we can get something like that done.
Absolutely, I very much appreciate it.
And I'll put my email, and at the end I'll put my email address in the chat, so anyone that wants to reach me, they can.
Okay, I have a question. Hi, so thank you so much for sharing part of your Saturday with us. And I'd like to go back to something that is really becoming more disturbing day by day, and it's the escalation of gun violence in our communities. It's very frightening. I travel up and down I-170 all the time, and the fact that this lady was just shot and killed. I mean, it's just and I'm really glad that you are there and you're talking to your colleagues on the other side of the aisle. I know we've got this urban-rural divide, but have you gained any insights into the mentality that seems to prevail in Missouri, where there's a desire to go back to the wild, wild West, guns everywhere? Do you have any insights into what's behind this? I mean, I'm just going to be frank. Is it racism? What's going on that these people feel you have to have guns in daycare centers, church, and so forth? Because we can't advance legislation to get background checks and so forth. We can't even have a conversation if we don't understand where they're coming from and what their concerns are.
Absolutely, Ms. Wilkerson. Thank you for that. And I think a lot of the things you stated plays a role in it, but as elected leaders, we have a sole responsibility, and that's to represent the interests of the people that we serve. And I think that a lot of elected officials have gotten so far off base from the people that they serve, playing to whether it's Donald Trump's playbook or this person's playbook. You got to speak to the interests of people that you represent. And, I was so grateful that I ran for state senate when I didn't have to. And that has allowed me to be able to be a leader of the people and speak about things that really matter. I give you a great example. I have folks that call me all the time and they say, what do you think about defunding the police? And the first thing I say is, well, I think we could have used a better terminology for it. And then secondly, I say, what does it mean? And it's very few people, if anyone, that can tell me what defund the police means. I owe it to every single one of you to know what the hell I'm talking about at some point. And I spend so much of my time. I spent my first year in the Missouri Senate. It was like school, learning the process, learning the rules and the procedures, reading. Never elect someone who don't like to read. I read hundreds of thousands of pages of legislation and policies, and that became precedent on how I operate and how I work. And I think politicians have gotten so into the space of using talking points and never going into detail about what their intentions are or what they're talking about. And we continue to elect those folks. So out in rural Missouri, guns, freedom, whatever dog whistle that they feel that they need to use to engage a base of people, they run with it. Because I have conversations with my colleagues all the time, and I say, hey, tell me this. And I became a better senator when I realized everything we do wasn't about practicality. So keep that in mind too. But I say, hey, why would you support folks not having access to quality healthcare when you represent one of the poorest parts of the state, maybe one of the poorest parts of the country, which is Southeast Missouri. Mm-hmm. Southeast Missouri is far poor and has a poverty level that exceeds the poverty level in St. Louis threefold. But you would vote for those folks to not have access to quality health care. You would create red tape for them to not have access to social services. You would support draconian policies that would put them in such dire stress, all because you're afraid of a late night tweet. That's where we've gotten into politics, and I would challenge everyone to look around and pay attention to who we elect. In 2018, we supported a ethic reform law. We supported raising minimum wage, legalizing medical marijuana in Missouri, but half the people, if not more, that we elected into office did not support any of those initiatives.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Williams, you've talked a couple of times about local governments' roles in maybe not overseeing their police forces as closely as they ought to. And I'm just thinking about what a patchwork of emergency services our region has, and places like Bellefontaine Neighbors, where, Riverview provides their fire district, but not their policing. And because fire so often goes with ambulances and EMTs, I wonder about people on the kind of social service fringes of things that we would call the police for. And is there a way that the state can put pressure on local governments to maybe combine some of these forces and services to make sure that those folks don't fall through the cracks?
Absolutely. I have a Senate district that has 35 municipalities within a 20-mile radius. Yeah, so that means I'm working with mayors, council people, aldermen, police chiefs, school board members, superintendents, and the scope. I represent some of the wealthiest communities like Clayton and Ladue, but also some of the more poverty-stricken ones like Kinloch, Berkeley, Pine Lawn, Ferguson. I have a very diverse district, which I would argue is and should be the model for the state. And we also spend, at the same time, $1 billion in overlapping services a year in St. Louis County because of municipalities, fire departments, et cetera. We have to figure out how to take a regional approach. If anyone ever listen to some things that I say, I run into people that say, well, Senator, I'm so glad you're here, but I don't live in your district. And I say, well, if you live in the state of Missouri, I got your back. And the reason I say that is because I look at St. Louis as a region, and I solely focus on how can we make our state better. And until we start carrying that attitude, a regional approach to how we govern, a pragmatic step towards making our state better, we're going to continue to have these silos and fiefdoms, which have enabled bad policing, which has created government waste, which has created an unprecedented amount of tax dollars that all of you are spending in some capacity, whether you live in the city or county or not. And we're still not getting quality services to ultimately uplift our communities and create opportunities for the folks that are underserved and disenfranchised. So I don't know the answer, but I can tell you until we start taking a regional approach and understanding that this is not about your little kingdom, but the people first, I think we'll start moving in the right direction.
Okay. I see a lot of, we're getting on to other topics as well, like education and so forth. I don't know how much time you actually have with us. We don't want to keep you past 2.
I told my 91-year-old grandfather, who was born September 29th, 1929, that he, for some reason, wants a chicken sandwich from Chick-fil-A. I told him I have it to him by 2:30. So whatever time I can get off to get to Florissant from University City, I'll be okay.
How about if we'll have a couple more questions? I have one more regarding citizens oversight committees of police. I think you've kind of touched on that a little bit. Florissant is starting to look at that as a possibility. And I'm just curious about how effective you think they are.
Well, I think any entity is effective if you got the right people involved and you're having consistent conversations, around these issues. I go back to that point I made earlier. You have so many good people doing great things in their own spaces. And until we start recognizing that work needs to be done together, we're going to continue to have folks over here doing one thing and folks over here doing another thing. And then ultimately the larger population is suffering in return. So, I think all those things are great, but if you're not talking to the right people and if you're not, when I think about the things, my approach to my job, I firmly believe that government works best when it's close to the people. So I spend as much of my time having these conversations because not only do I learn, but it also gives me a legitimate litmus test on where I need to be as an elected leader and not just this room of talking heads or some silo of Twitter that has, in my opinion, has disconnected so many people in important positions that are capable of doing great things, but they continue to overlook the detail. So I don't know, but I can tell you if there is a group that you all are working with, I'd love to be involved and allow my space to support it the best that I possibly can. But just know that what's happening in North St. Louis County is just as important as what's happening in St. Louis City. And I don't think that a boulevard should divide the conversation or determine whether or not those populations of people should have services.
Thank you. We have people in all over the region in our Metropolitan League, and we also have a new policing study group going on. Perhaps
I saw that.
Further conversations will be, forthcoming with you, hopefully. One more opportunity. Anybody have some really pressing questions they would like to ask at this point? Nope. Well, it doesn't look like we have it right. I'm sure we do, but we feel like we've gotten a lot of that information out right now. So I think we're going to thank you once again for your time today. It's just been lovely having you. Should we unmute everybody, Gene, so we can give him a rousing hand?
Yes. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And you're going to give us some info. You're going to give us some contact info, or I can pass it along. And can anyone get your newsletter, even if they aren't in your district?
100%. So I put my email address in there. So anyone that wants to connect or have an idea or a question or just need to reach me for just constituent services, please email me. I have Robert Arbuthnot, my chief of staff, is on the line as well. So he writes down questions, he takes notes. We go back and re-review a lot of this to make sure that, we either can answer those questions in the future if I didn't, or making sure that we really are locking in on some of the concerns that you all have. So we'll take a look at that. And if you, I'm on Facebook, I'm on any platform that you can think of, please follow me there and just let me know however I can be a part of what you have going on, so I can continue this conversation about police reform, expungement, or beyond. Because I can tell you right now, government works best when it's close to the people. We have to inform the public on what the challenges are and make sure that everyone knows how government is working for them and not the other way around. So please let me know how I can be a part of it. Thank you all so much. Please be safe. And I'm truly grateful for the opportunity to serve this state.
Thank you. This meeting has been recorded. for the purpose of the league. And I don't know how that'll be used, but Dean Dugan is in charge of that. So we're going to let you go get the chicken sandwich now.
Get the Chick-fil-A, yes. I'm going to do that. But thank you all so much. And Susan, I appreciate you reaching out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Louise, good to see you.
Okay, good to see you too. Thank you.
All right, bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.